Hello, welcome back to our channel MindFuel. Hope that you like first part of Who is Hitler series. In case you don't watch it, go and watch part 1 first to understand the whole story of Hitler. The greatest enemy of Nazism was not, in Hitler's view, liberal democracy in Germany, which was already on the verge of collapse. It was the rival Weltanschauung, Marxism, which for him embraced social democracy as well as communism, with its insistence on internationalism and economic conflict. Beyond Marxism, he believed the greatest enemy of all to be the Jew, who was for Hitler the incarnation of evil. There is debate among historians as to when anti-Semitism became Hitler's deepest and strongest conviction. As early as 1919, he wrote, "Rational anti-Semitism must lead to systematic legal opposition. Its final objective must be the removal of the Jews altogether." In Mein Kampf, he described the Jew as the destroyer of culture, a parasite within the nation, and a menace. During Hitler's absence in prison, the Nazi Party languished as the result of internal dissension. After his release, Hitler faced difficulties that had not existed before 1923. Economic stability had been achieved by a currency reform, and the Dawes Plan had scaled back Germany's World War I reparations. The Republic seemed to have become more respectable. Hitler was forbidden to make speeches, first in Bavaria, then in many other German states. These prohibitions remained in force until 1927-28. Nevertheless, the party grew slowly in numbers, and in 1926, Hitler successfully established his position within it against Gregor Strasser, whose followers were primarily in northern Germany. The advent of the Depression in 1929, however, led to a new period of political instability. In 1930, Hitler made an alliance with the nationalist Alfred Hugenberg in a campaign against the Young Plan, a second renegotiation of Germany's war reparation payments. With the help of Hugenberg's newspapers, Hitler was able for the first time to reach a nationwide audience. The alliance also enabled him to seek support from many of the magnates of business and industry who controlled political funds and were anxious to use them to establish a strong right-wing, anti-socialist government. The subsidies Hitler received from the industrialists placed his party on a secure financial footing and enabled him to make effective his emotional appeal to the lower middle class and the unemployed, based on the proclamation of his faith that Germany would awaken from its sufferings to reassert its natural greatness. Hitler's dealings with Hugenberg and the industrialists exemplify his skill in using those who sought to use him. But his most important achievement was the establishment of a truly national party, with its voters and followers drawn from different classes and religious groups, unique in Germany at the time. Unremitting propaganda, set against the failure of the government to improve conditions during the Depression, produced a steadily mounting electoral strength for the Nazis. The party became the second largest in the country, rising from 2.6% of the vote in the national election of 1928 to more than 18% in September 1930. In 1930, Hitler opposed Hindenburg in the presidential election, capturing 36.8% of the votes on the second ballot, finding himself in a strong position by virtue of his unprecedented mass following. He entered into a series of intrigues with conservatives such as Franz von Papen, Otto Meissner, and President Hindenburg's son, Oskar. The fear of communism and the rejection of the Social Democrats bound them together. In spite of a decline in the Nazi Party's votes in November 1932, Hitler insisted that the chancellorship was the only office he would accept. On January 30, 1933, Hindenburg offered him the chancellorship of Germany. His cabinet included few Nazis at that point. Hitler's personal life had grown more relaxed and stable with the added comfort that accompanied political success. After his release from prison, he often went to live on the Obersalzberg near Berchtesgaden. His income at this time was derived from party funds and from writing for nationalist newspapers. He was largely indifferent to clothes and food but did not eat meat and gave up drinking beer and all other alcohols. His rather irregular working schedule prevailed. He usually rose late, sometimes dawdled at his desk, and retired late at night. At Berchtesgaden, his half-sister Angela Raubal and her 2 daughters accompanied him. Hitler became devoted to one of them, Gaily, and it seems that his possessive jealousy drove her to suicide in September 1931. For weeks, Hitler was inconsolable. Sometime later, Eva Braun, a shop assistant from Munich, became his mistress. Hitler rarely allowed her to appear in public with him. He would not consider marriage on the grounds that it would hamper his career. Braun was a simple young woman with few intellectual gifts. Her great virtue in Hitler's eyes was her unquestioning loyalty, and in recognition of this, he legally married her at the end of his life. Once in power, Hitler established an absolute dictatorship. He secured the president's assent for new elections. The Reichstag fire on the night of February 27, 1933, apparently the work of a Dutch communist, Marinus van der Lubbe, provided an excuse for a decree overriding all guarantees of freedom and for an intensified campaign of violence. In these conditions, when the elections were held March 5, the Nazis polled 43.9% of the votes. On March 21, the Reichstag assembled in the Potsdam Garrison Church to demonstrate the unity of National Socialism with the old conservative Germany, represented by Hindenburg. 2 days later, the enabling bill, giving full powers to Hitler, was passed in the Reichstag by the combined votes of Nazi, Nationalist, and Center Party deputies. March 23, 1933. Less than 3 months later, all non-Nazi parties, organizations, and labor unions ceased to exist. The disappearance of the Catholic Center Party was followed by a German concordat with the Vatican in July. Hitler had no desire to spark a radical revolution. Conservative ideas were still necessary if he was to succeed to the presidency and retain the support of the army. Moreover, he did not intend to expropriate the leaders of industry, provided they served the interests of the Nazi state. Ernst Röhm, however, was a protagonist of the continuing revolution. He was also, as head of the SA, distrusted by the army. Hitler tried first to secure Röhm's support for his policies by persuasion. Hermann Göring and Heinrich Himmler were eager to remove Röhm, but Hitler hesitated until the last moment. Finally, on June 29, 1934, he reached his decision. On the night of the Long Knives, Röhm and his lieutenant Edmund Heinz were executed without trial, along with Gregor Strasser, Kurt von Schleicher, and others. The army leaders, satisfied at seeing the sea broken up, approved Hitler's actions. When Hindenburg died on August 2, the army leaders, together with Papen, assented to the merging of the chancellorship and the presidency, with which went the supreme command of the armed forces of the Reich. Now, officers and men took an oath of allegiance to Hitler personally. Economic recovery and a fast reduction in unemployment, coincident with world recovery, but for which Hitler took credit, made the regime increasingly popular, and a combination of success and police terror brought the support of 90% of the voters in a plebiscite Hitler devoted little attention to the organization and running of the domestic affairs of the Nazi state, responsible for the broad lines of policy as well as for the system of terror that upheld the state. He left detailed administration to his subordinates. Each of these exercised arbitrary power in his own sphere, but by deliberately creating offices and organizations with overlapping authority, Hitler effectively prevented any one of these particular realms from ever becoming sufficiently strong to challenge his own absolute authority. Thanks for watching. If you like the video, must press the subscribe button and bell icon. The third part of this series will become soon.